really hope that you find it interesting what we're going to talk about. So I'll start with some introductions. I know Andy has done a little bit of an introduction, but I'm Helen McAlinney. I'm the Allied Health Professions Workforce and Faculty Lead. I work in the AHP faculty in South Yorkshire Integrated Care Board. And with me, I've got Izzy Addy and EmilyJohnson, and they've been on a leadership placement with us in the South Yorkshire AHP faculty. So to start off, we're all proud diagnostic radiographers. Izzy and Emily are just completing their final year of study, and they will be graduating soon. So in the AHP faculty, we focus on AHP workforce education, training and transformation. And what we want to tell you about tonight is a little bit more about the leadership placements in the faculty and how that transformative work completed by the students has and will support our greener AHP communities in South Yorkshire. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to give a bit of context to the project and the placement. I'll describe how we started off, and then I'll hand over to Izzy and Emily, who will describe their respective contributions to the project. So when we were given the opportunity to work with diagnostic radiography students, we decided that we'd begin a project focusing on the greener AHP agenda, and that is specifically for South Yorkshire AHPs. And the rationale for this, as we explained to the students and our network, was multifaceted, but it included the NHS net zero goal, our AHP strategy for England, AHPs Deliver. At the point we were thinking about that, the 2023 CAPO AHP of the Year award winner was a greener AHP intervention, and it's also greener AHP is a strategic priority for our South Yorkshire AHP Council. So we wanted to start off and we wanted to really establish some system-wide understanding of greener AHP activity in South Yorkshire, because it was something that we definitely didn't have. We weren't 100% sure what was going on and who was doing that. So we specifically wanted to understand what our AHPs were doing, which of our 15 professions were and weren't involved in greener AHP activity. And so what the plan was that once we'd gathered that South Yorkshire intelligence, we'd collate some case studies from what we'd found and we'd share them. And we did suspect that there were some really good examples in South Yorkshire. We just needed to find them and share them. And also, whilst doing that, we wanted to establish what we would need to progress the agenda for South Yorkshire AHPs and what, as an AHP faculty and a network, we could do to support them. So from October 2023 to April 2024, we had 3 cohorts of diagnostic radiography students in the faculty. As I've described about Emily and Izzy, they were all third-year undergraduate students and they were from Sheffield Hallam University. And I think really it's useful to point out at this point that there were challenges associated with having 3 cohorts of students, and that's because each cohort was scheduled to be with us for quite short periods of time actually, and we knew this was a big project for us. It was a new work stream for the faculty and the council, so the approach we took was to look at this as a stretch project across all 3 cohorts, and each cohort was a discrete leg of that bigger project, and in that way the project was able to be iterative and the findings from each stage informed the next step, and it absolutely did as we went along. So although the students were in the AHP faculty, they weren't isolated, and that's been really important in the way that we worked, what we were able to find out, how we shared, and just what networks were available to us. So this slide attempts to show some of the connections. It's not exhausted, but I just want to highlight that the students were obviously affiliated to Sheffield Hallam University. However, they did collaborate with the AHP Council, our South Yorkshire AHP community, greener AHP community of practice, and the South Yorkshire and Bassett Law Acute Federation. And in terms of the AHP community of practice, I believe that there are only 2 in England, and we've been lucky to have one of those in South Yorkshire. So that's really positive. And the aims of our project and the terms of reference of the community of practice were really closely aligned, meaning the information, networks, ideas and recommendations could be really easily shared. Another important connection that we had, that we made on this project, was a regional one, and that was with the West Yorkshire AHP faculty. And that collaboration across the region really enriched our learning and also increased the potential for scalability of our findings and outcomes. So as described, the placements were divided into 3 cohorts. The placement was divided into 3 cohorts, each of them having either 5 or 4 weeks on placement. And so the approach we took, so each cohort having a slightly different role to play in the overall completion of the project. So cohort 1 started the project by scoping. They scoped for us. They took the first steps in helping us understand what was happening in the system. And I'll start by describing what they did in a little bit more detail and outline how their actions informed cohort 2. Cohort 2 were all about progression on that preparatory work done by cohort 1, and it was very much a stage of development of those initial ideas. And then cohort 3 worked on facilitating the sharing of the work, and they developed resources to do that with and the platforms to do it on, and that included recommendations for non-digital options as well. And in cohort 3 concluded the project, but very much using the work of all 3 of the cohorts. And what they did, they embedded a sustainable approach to working on greener AHP, on the greener AHP agenda for us in South Yorkshire. So cohort 1 were Alex, Tech, Caroline and Stevie. So this group, what did they do? So they needed to gather some information and start painting that picture for us. And to achieve that, they created a survey. I've put the link in that if anybody wants to see the survey. But the survey looked at how much time staff spent on sustainability, what staff understood about sustainability and net zero, and what were the preferred methods of communication. The cohort 1 also explored different social media platforms, and they sent a lot of emails. They sent over 60 emails in total across all our networks, the networks that we used. And actually they got 18 responses, which we were really pleased about because it was quite a short time frame. So they learned, what did they learn from the data that we got? Well, what we wanted to do was capture the depth and spread of activity, and the students found evidence of greener AHP activity in 3 of our 4 South Yorkshire places, but I must say it was only in the acute trusts. So regarding the 4th place, we really suspect that it was time constraints rather than lack of activity that prevented us finding any evidence. But what we do acknowledge from this is that we need to go wider than the acute trust. We need to further explore primary care, local authority and PVO. We wanted to understand what professions had engaged in greener AHP activity, and we found it was primarily those AHPs that were in therapies who'd engaged, so it's physio, OT, speech and language, and there were also some ODPs that had engaged. Another question we asked was what was happening in terms of the scope of activity. We wanted to understand that scope. So we did find examples of digitisation and going paper-free, implementation of training on the environmental impact of medications. We found evidence of AHPs e-cycling and electric vehicle use, and also that all the trusts who responded were installing electric vehicle charging points. In terms of the survey that we sent out, the themes from the survey were that although a number of the AHPs were aware of the NHS net zero goal, their deeper understanding of how to work in a sustainable way was not there. They didn't know what to do next about it. And that was really helpful to understand that gap as it informed what we did next. And the final thing that I just want to touch on regarding the social media is that we asked the students, when they sent out the survey, to explore different platforms for sharing the survey and to evaluate which one was most effective. So they evaluated them in terms of viewership. Was the platform wide-reaching? Did it attract a professional audience? Or were the users accessing it on a more personal basis? And I would say in terms of this project and where we were at that stage, they concluded that prioritising platforms that were better at targeting individuals rather than having lots of viewership and developed greener AHP discussions better. But that changed a little bit as we went along in the project. So those was what we found, and essentially the recommendations that came from cohort 1 were to increase the social media presence, and that was increasing the reach and depth, and to develop more South Yorkshire specific social media platforms, and because we reflected on that the students used their personal LinkedIn account, for instance, and that potentially impacted on what AHPs professionals we captured. And if we wanted to increase the visibility, we needed a more AHP specific face or identity on the platform with lots of visibility. They recommended we improve the channels of communication between AHPs, and that included non-AHPs. We wanted to reach out and get non-AHPs into our greener AHP conversation. So that meant reaching out to sustainability leads within organisations and within the ICB. They also recommended that we continue to get case studies and start the process of sharing the findings, because the survey showed that deeper of understanding, you know, people wanted to know how to act on it, what actions they could take. So we wanted to start getting that out there. And so those were the recommendations from cohort 1. So I'm going to hand over to Izzy now, and she's going to talk about cohort 2. Thank you.
Hello, so me, Aliha and Grace was the second cohort to join the South Yorkshire AHP faculty. So our key role in this was to progress from the information and the knowledge provided and expand and develop on the ideas. So we did this by looking further into some of the case studies that were provided, and we used the contacts to further develop our knowledge. So as you can see on the next slide, it just shows our key aims of the project. So this just shows a really good overview of what our 4 weeks on this placement entailed of. And as you can see, it was jam-packed, it was very busy, and it was a lot of fun, I just wanted to add as well. So the reason we decided to create a Gantt chart was to keep us self-grounded throughout this project, because there was a lot of different aspects of it as well. And when you're working so hard on one part of it, it's easy to forget about the remaining parts of it, and we wanted to make sure we were filling all of the brief all together. So as you can see from this, as it was a leadership placement, we had some leadership activities such as the Edward Jenner programme, and we also learned about ourselves as leaders through insights. We sent out a Google form, we created a social media presence for the faculty, and we also really developed our presentation skills. Now, as you can see towards the end of the Gantt chart, there is some blanks where we were unable to fully fulfill the whole project, which was entailed to us. So we used that to create recommendations for cohort 3 to be able to progress further with that project, and we feel like we left them in a really good place to be able to do that as well. So on the next slide, we'll kind of just give you an overview of what we did, broke down a little bit. So the first thing that we did was we went back over our case studies that we found, and we wanted to upload them to the Centre for Sustainable Health website. So the first one we looked into was the digitalisation at Barnsley Hospital. We undertook a Zoom call with Catherine at Barnsley, and she was able to provide some real detail of this initiative, and we can see how successful it was. She was able to say that a good initiative for it was that Barnsley Hospital provided the best equipment and the most was able to provide the equipment to support this initiative and for it to really be a positive action. And they're hoping to implement this for the whole hospital soon, which would be a really good step in the right direction for sustainability. As you know, paper gets wasted all the time, it gets used all the time. So to become fully digital would be a brilliant step in the right direction, hopefully using sustainable energy as well. So to upload this, we all worked together, we all found out how the website worked, and we were able to put our knowledge together and upload it to the website. As you can see there, that were our first upload. Then moving on, we wanted to create an identifiable social media presence for the faculty itself. Now, we want to be able to target AHPs specifically, as they are involved in our faculty, they're the heart of the faculty there who are working clinically. So through Instagram, we were able to do that. And through Instagram, you create a following, you create a base, and your activity engages with that base, which is really good to keep AHPs connected throughout, which links to collaborative working and learning, which is what we're trying to implement as well. Now, we decided to create a TikTok profile, as it's one of the newer social media platforms, and TikTok is so widespread, you can inspire people from every walk of life. So as a South Yorkshire faculty, our TikToks might come up in London, they might come up in Scotland, they might come up overseas in USA. You just never know who's going to get this audience, and to get conversations sparking on a national, worldwide level is absolutely incredible. When we left the cohort, the faculty, and our placement came to an end, one of our TikToks reached 800 viewers, which we thought were absolutely incredible to say the TikTok account had only been open for a week. And then the Instagram account is just growing followers day by word of mouth. And it's really incredible. I'm still following it, I'm still watching it grow, and it's lovely to see it's still getting so many followers. Now, we did this to keep inspiring people and to keep people talking about sustainability, as we're celebrating it this week, but it needs to be worked on continuously. And one of the things we learned from this project was the smallest ideas, the smallest initiatives are really helping to become sustainable and can make the biggest impacts. So if people can get talking about one idea that they've thought of and found and take that into their department, that small idea can then get pinched in a positive pinching way through other departments and through other trusts and through other hospitals, and can be really implemented into the NHS and into healthcare. So moving on to our next slide, we want to talk about the next part of the project we did, which was talking to sustainability leads on how they are communicating. So when we first put this survey out, we targeted primarily only sustainability leads and people with sustainability in their job title, as we thought this would give us the best answers. But as we thought about this, part of everyone's job role is sustainability to reach that net zero goal. So then we opened up our search, our Google form, to connect with other modality leads, to connect with managers, to connect with everyone. And that really helped us grow our numbers. And to be honest, we were really overwhelmed with the amount of responses we got. We got some really good ideas. We got some really good ways that we can improve this. And it helped us highlight as well that we can't forget about primary care within this initiative. We need to think about all aspects of healthcare. So this was really good to see who we are in touch with, what emails we have collected, and really get a connective contact list put together for cohort 3, so they could start straight away from where we left off and have all the emails there gathered together. Some of the ways where they've said they'd like to speak to each other is via Future NHS, social media, which we've been able to create, face-to-face, teams and staff wellbeing networks, which really highlighted for us, and we've been able to move that forward. So moving on to the next slide. These were our recommendations that we provided for cohort 3. We wanted them to consolidate and upload more of our case studies and to create resources to put onto the Future NHS website, as we realised that the case studies going onto the Centre for Sustainable Health website, they weren't eye-catching, they weren't interesting, it was quite a formative post. So we wanted something really progressive and something really eye-catching to put onto the Future NHS. And we wanted them to further analyse our Google form responses and explore into the staff wellbeing networks. We wanted them to create more content and grow our social media following and expand the greener AHP community, especially in primary care. So this is just a bit of a reflection from what I've taken away from this placement. I feel like as a student going on to clinical, you only tend to see what's in front of you. You only tend to experience your department and what you're able to see. And being part of the South Yorkshire AHP faculty, it's really helped me see that collaboration within healthcare. We get taught about collaboration in university, through modules, but now I can really see the importance of it, and I'm really going to take that with me into my newly qualified working life as a radiographer. As well as this, it's going to help me bear in mind being sustainable as a practicing radiographer and keep that at the heart of what I do. If I think of any ideas, I will share them with my line manager, I will promote it, and I really think it's helped me adapt into a really good healthcare professional, and I can't wait to see how I can implement this into my future career. So moving on now, I'm going to hand over to Emily, who was cohort 3, and see what she has learnt from this experience as well.
So hi, my name's Emily. I was with Alvin, Shannon and Sophie working with South Yorkshire Greener AHP, and we took over from cohort 2, and our main goal for this was just sharing the information and disseminating it. So on the next slide. So this is what we did. We prepared case studies for upload to the Centre of Sustainable Healthcare website. So as you've seen from cohort 2, they didn't quite get to finish this because they were only there for 4 weeks. So we've taken over and we've put all the case studies on the CHS template. This was challenging because of the time constraint, because it was quite a long process to do this, and we did have some problems. So we did run into the issue of not being able to get onto the site. So just on the next slide. So we consolidated and uploaded more case studies to Future NHS website as well. So we needed to familiarise ourselves with the Future NHS and what it could offer for the greener AHP agenda. We had created a template. It's really aesthetic, as that was one of the issues cohort 2 found. This was done by Sophie, and the final design ideas were agreed. All the case studies were then transferred and uploaded, just so we can all share them with everyone. I think that's really important. So we have got posters as well to promote this. So here's an example of our template. If you want to take a read, we'll leave it on the screen for a second. So the example here is the reuse of walking aids. But the idea is you can take this template and put anything you need in it. So it's about making it sustainable for the whole of the year, for moving on from that, not just Greener AHP Week. So from the Google form, we decided this needed further analysis. So we researched and analysed cohort 2's findings, and we created the findings and the recommendations to be presented at a group meeting with a supervisor to formulate a realistic action plan. Presented findings and recommendations regionally. So our recommendations from this involved a poster in the department use, interactive CPD content, more social media content, and a comment section on Future NHS for suggestions. And then we also partook in a webinar, which was actually yesterday. So we left a video of this, of what we've done for the 4 weeks. So on the next slide. So we created more content to grow the following. So that's an example of one of our posters. So it just tells you where you can find us on Future NHS and details what's actually in the site. So we've also created a South Yorkshire specific LinkedIn, created content for this, and increased the platform following. So we have about 16 templates and I think 16 posters for this, just to be disseminated throughout the whole of the year and going further into practice. So our recommendations going forward for the ICB are the Capo Greener Awards. So we can identify people from these case studies, potentially for these awards, because a lot of good things have been done. I think we've got walking aids, digitalisation, electric vans, e-cycling. It goes on for a while, a lot of these case studies. And the future case studies to add to the CSH and the Future NHS. So it's about creating a sustainable resource, not just about sustainability in the NHS. And these resources will continue to share the posters, the case studies on social media platforms, and share via email for printing where digital access is challenging. For social media, we want to nominate a specific person who can take over just to share what their profession does towards the greener agenda and get a bit more specificity just in what other professions do so we can learn from it. So here's some of our reflections. This is Alban and Sophie's. My time in this placement has been incredibly valuable because I think I've got a much wider understanding of what they do at the ICB now and about a system approach to sharing information. So as Izzy said, I think it's taught a lot about collaboration, but not a lot is taught about how it actually works between organisations. It's more just clinical. So I think the most valuable thing I've taken is probably confidence. I probably wouldn't be sat here doing this doing this talk with you if I hadn't been on this placement. So that's definitely helped. So I definitely think organisation, reflection, talking to peers, taking on critical feedback, all of this I can use in my future practice. So it's been a really useful placement. So just some challenges that we have come across. I think this applies to all three cohorts really. So familiarising ourselves with the new topics and the agendas. This was all new to me personally. I don't know how Izzy feels about it, but as I said, I didn't know much about the ICB, what you actually do, any of the sustainability going on within the hospitals in South Yorkshire or further. And I was working with a new group of people. So we did an insights quiz just to adapt to different styles of working. And we found that some people were slightly more creative and some people were more of a controller. So the short placement time, so I think we had about 4 weeks on this placement, and I think one of the cohort might have had 5. So it definitely involves a lot of picking up the work of others, which you had to familiarise yourself with the work just to make sure you're talking about the right things. And then a lot of technical difficulties. Because this was an online placement, we really struggled with Teams, Zoom, recording meetings. We've got a lot of bloopers from our submission to the West Yorkshire webinar. Those were quite funny. I think it took us about 4 attempts in total to actually get it recorded, but we kept persevering and we did end up doing it. I'm not sure if anyone went to that. Time pressures and keeping the task on the brief. So we did realise about week 3 that we actually hadn't done the CSH upload. So we've got all the case studies ready to go on the templates, but we'd completely missed uploading them. So I think we really needed to sort of have a little talk, get back into what cohort 2 actually asked us to do. So academic work submission has definitely been a big pressure for everyone. So we've had dissertations due and a lot of other work due for other modules alongside this placement. And we've also had a gap where we went away for Easter for 2 weeks. So I think in future, if this placement was to run, it might be better as a cohesive module. I'll just pass back to Helen now.
Thank you both Emily and Izzy, really great presentations there. So I just want to finish by summarising what we've talked about in terms of impact. So regarding leadership, I think the students have been, I probably can't say it better than they've just said it, but they've been exposed to and they're better able to understand the importance of leadership and leadership styles. They understand that we are all leaders. They've been able to develop themselves as leaders. They've got increased self-awareness, communication, resilience and improved emotional intelligence. And they've also got a greater understanding of the breadth of leadership roles available for them in healthcare. So the career options they've got available to them, where they can use the presenting and professional skills they've practiced in this placement in their roles. In terms of system working, well, they've both said it really, really clearly, but they now have a better understanding of what the system is, how the system works, and how we can influence on a wider scale, and how that shared purpose can improve patient care. In terms of greener AHP, I think one of the impacts of this is progression for us in South Yorkshire, and we've progressed to a place where we've got recommendations for action that are based on system intelligence. We wanted to understand what was happening, we wanted to understand where the gaps were, we wanted to understand how we could help, and now we know because of this project. We have a resource pack to sustain that greener AHP delivery in South Yorkshire, and it's got resources in it that have been developed to support us in doing that. We've got identified platforms to share the case studies. We know where we're going to share them. That's come from the system as well, Future NHS and the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare. And we've got improved communication, because that was one of the things that we needed. It came from the system. So we've got in terms of social media, but there's also a plan for people who don't have access to social media and are non-digital. And we've got improved system and regional working, and that's been shown in all the collaboration that we've been able to do throughout this project. And finally, the last thing I just want to touch on is a plan for celebration. We've really got a plan for celebration as an outcome of this project, and that's in terms of the CAPO Awards and really elevating and shining a light on that greener AHP activity in South Yorkshire. So on behalf of the three of us, I just want to really say thank you for joining, for the time you've taken in your evening to listen to our presentation. I really hope you found it useful, and we're happy to answer any questions. But before that, I just want to say again, well done to Emily and Izzy, who are representatives here of their student cohort, but passing on that congratulations for this project to the rest of the students as well. Thank you. I'll stop sharing there.